Hello everyone, and welcome to the Successfully Balanced podcast. I am so excited to have you here, especially because this is our first ever official episode of the podcast. So I hope that you are having the most lovely week and welcome. If you enjoy this episode, I would absolutely love if you could rate this podcast on Spotify. It literally takes you 10 seconds and helps this podcast get reached to even more people. And obviously if you are on YouTube, then like and subscribe and all of those things so that you don't miss out on another episode. So why am I making this podcast today? I have always loved the idea of leveling up and becoming the best version of myself. So I thought it would be really cool to share with you guys some of the habits that I have both learned both from personal experience, but also things that I have picked up from listening to other podcasts and doing my own research. But before we get into it, I thought that it would be a really nice little tradition to do at the start of every episode to sort of show how I am modeling the concept of successfully balanced. So I want to share with you one thing that I've been doing each week to work closer to my goals, and also something that I've been doing to just step back and enjoy the present and enjoy my life. So the goal that I've been working towards this week is launching this podcast and putting the first episode up, which as of you listening to this, it has officially happened. So I'm really proud of that. And I think most of the work of getting this podcast up has been mental and me being like, no, Ari, you can do this, and just putting away those limiting beliefs, but it is up there now and I'm really proud of that. And then for the balance side of things, it was Valentine's Day yesterday and my partner got me the most beautiful flowers. I actually really want to show you guys because they're right here. If you can't see, if you're watching on YouTube or you're just listening with the audio, they are these really beautiful pink and purple flowers, and I think they're daisies. I don't know flowers very well, but they look like daisies. And I'm just so grateful to have him, and yeah. But we also had planned to spend Valentine's Day making homemade pizzas and watching our favorite show and eating chocolate dipped strawberries, and we did all of that, and it was the most lovely thing. And it was so nice because yesterday I had a very full day of preparing workshops and meeting with clients and all of that, and so it was so lovely to just at the end of the day just switch off and enjoy my Saturday with my partner. And yeah, but I would highly recommend if you have a partner or if you have some close girlfriends to arrange a night like that, because it is just such a beautiful thing to be able to spend your time like that. Anyways, I hope that little prelude to the episode is helpful for you guys, because maybe it gives you some ideas and some suggestions of how you can take what I say in the episodes into your real life. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you find that helpful or if you have any other suggestions. But moving on to the actual episode. This episode was inspired by the most incredible Beck Stewart. If you guys are following her on Instagram, you'll notice that she's currently doing, I think it's the top 1% woman morning routine, I believe it is. If you're watching this and you follow her, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the habits that I have chosen to explain here are partly ones that I have experienced myself and that I practice on a day-to-day basis, but also ones that I am working towards improving, because obviously no one is perfect. But without further ado, let's get into it. Actually, no, one more thing. I have my notes on my laptop, so if you're watching a video and you see me glancing here, that is just to save me some editing time, because it takes me like a long time to edit these videos. And if I can avoid cutting like every 2 seconds when I look at my notes, that would be amazing. So if you notice me looking at my laptop, I'm not being rude, I still care about you. Yeah. Oh, and actually no, one more thing is when I say top 1% women, I don't just mean the top 1% in wealth and income and everything. I'm talking about the top % of women in their field, whether they are an athlete and they are the top 1% of their team or their sport or whatever, or if they are in business, if they are in the top 1% of their industry, anything like that, where they are performing at the highest possible level and they are just doing their personal best, and that shows on an industry level. So we're not just talking about wealth here, we are talking about high performance in whatever form that is for women. And also, if you're not a woman listening to this, it's still very applicable. I just say that because most of our listeners are going to be women. You get the idea. Anyways, the first habit of top 1% women is self-trust and discipline. So they keep the promises that they set for themselves and they actually follow through with it, because confidence isn't just something that happens to you. So if you're waiting around to feel confident, to be able to feel like you can do something, then it will never happen. But if you take that first step, even though you feel like you can't do it, and you can prove to yourself that you can do things even when you're scared to, that is where the confidence is built. For example, when I started my first podcast, I was not very confident on camera. I did not know how to speak to a room where there's no one here, and it was just really awkward. But I said to myself, I was like, okay, I know that my first 10 episodes is going to be not very good, and I just need to get those ones out of the way. Doing that meant that throughout that process, I would build the confidence to show myself that, hey, I actually can produce a podcast and I actually can speak not terribly. And it took me getting over that lack of confidence that would then build the confidence required to produce a better podcast. So it all comes down to confidence coming out of the practice of doing things that you said you'll do, even when you think that you can't do them. And building that confidence in yourself by setting yourself goals, by trusting yourself to follow through with them, and being disciplined in choosing the harder choice every single day to get you closer to your goals. Number 2, strategic planning. I could literally talk about this forever because I am such a planner. Like, I love having my days planned out and my tasks planned out and everything like that. If you are type A like me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the top 1% women know that their time is finite, so they want to be using it to the absolute best of their ability. So they will set big goals and they will break those big goals into small pieces. They will slot each of those smaller pieces into their everyday lives. They use time blocking and other task and time management techniques to make sure that they are getting the absolute most out of their time and make sure that they are making progress towards their goals every single day. They are also constantly auditing their time and their energy and seeing where it is going and actively making improvements to spend their time better, spend their energy better, and ultimately just get the most out of their time and energy. Number 3, physical and mental wellness. I could not emphasize this one enough. Like, if you do nothing else, if you walk away from this podcast and do not a single other thing that I've mentioned, look after yourself. Because I used to be that girl who watched 24/7 and said, like, I will sleep when I die. I don't have time to sleep. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat healthy. But the reality is that you actually don't have time not to, because if you're not looking after yourself and you get sick or you burn out or anything like that, that is weeks off that you can't physically function. So you need to, number 1, slow down and rest, because if you don't slow down, your body and your life will force you to slow down. And I can tell you from experience, it is not going to be a convenient time that's going to force you to slow down. Because if you're not taking care of your health and well-being, you will not be able to focus, you will be exhausted, and obviously you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. Now, I do apologize in advance because I'm going to be using this metaphor, this analogy in so many episodes in the future, but think of your life or your goals like a car, and you are the engine of that car. You are what's driving it forwards. It does not matter if the windows are broken or the paint is scratched. If the engine is fine, the car can run. But if the engine is broken, then nothing else matters because the car simply will not run. And that is ultimately my mission when I'm working with my mentees, is that I'm not a business coach, I'm not helping them to scale their business, but what I do is make sure that they, as the engine of their car or the engine of their business or their work or whatever they do, is running at its best. So really all those habits that you see everywhere that you think, oh, they're just so trendy, like going to Pilates, drinking matcha. No, going to bed early, getting in your 10,000 steps, going to the gym, eating healthy, all of those things, those should not be trends. Those are non-negotiable. So if you do nothing else, sleep, exercise, nutrition, those are your bare minimum. Number 4, lifelong learning. I am so big on this, especially having started a business and education and all about learning. This is a huge one. And since you're listening to this podcast, I already know that you are one of these kinds of people who just wants to get hold of everything that you can possibly get to improve your knowledge, your skills, everything like that. So congratulations for being here, because you've already taken a step to become better. But the top 1% women are always consuming podcasts, books, online courses, real life courses, getting new skills, anything that they can do to improve their knowledge and their skills. However, this point would not be complete without the follow through, because there is no point just learning and just constantly taking in new information if you're not going to apply it. Because if you were to walk away from this episode and be like, okay, cool, that was a cool episode. Now I know the top habits of 1% women. Like, that's basically useless. You might as well have just not listened at that point. However, if you actually go away from this episode and you start practicing the things that I say and you start putting these habits into practice in your everyday life, that is going to make the world of a difference, okay? And there is a lot of talk at the moment about how people are sort of hoarding knowledge. Like, we're always watching YouTube videos on how to become a better version of ourselves. And I feel like I'm so ironic saying this when I'm literally like talking about self-improvement. But there's a lot of that where we will just constantly consume information without even taking the second to assimilate that and actually see, okay, how can I apply this in my life? So that's a huge one. Not just learning, but actually applying in your life and following through with the information that you learned. Number 5, ruthless boundaries. I sort of alluded to this one before, but the top 1% women know how to say no. And for any of you fellow people pleasers, this one will hit hard because it is so easy to just say yes to anything and everything because one, we don't want to disappoint anyone and we want to be seen as that person who can always be there to help with the printing and the reformatting of the documents or whatever it is that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. And we also are scared of missing out on an opportunity that might slip us by. But if you say yes to everything, then you are basically saying no to the things that really matter to you. Because we all have a finite amount of time in a day and a finite amount of energy. So that time and energy needs to be dedicated towards what we actually care about. So if you're saying yes to every social invitation without even taking a moment to consider like who's going to be there, where is it, what would I be doing if I wasn't at this event, and you're just saying yes blatantly and blindly, then you could be losing really valuable time to either work on your business or your self-care, or even just spend time with quality people who you know raise your energy and you know that you have really deep, meaningful discussions with. Now, obviously, I do love some spontaneity, and it is really important as part of living a balanced life to say yes to things, but we don't want to just ruthlessly be saying yes for the sake of it. We do want to actually consider what we're saying yes to and take opportunities with a grain of salt and actually think, okay, how is this going to benefit us in the long run? I will make another episode on this, but something that is interesting is the difference between high nutrient leisure and low nutrient leisure. So low nutrient leisure, for example, would be like watching TV, scrolling on social media, spending time with people who just go out and party and drink, and you get the idea. Whereas high nutrient leisure would be things like reading a book, going for a walk, playing card games, anything which leaves you feeling more fulfilled and more complete and whole as a human being. I do really want to make an episode on this because I think that is a really interesting concept. And I think once I learned that and I really started observing where I was spending my free time, it really made a difference in my energy and my ability to come back to work even better. Let me know in the comments if you guys do want that episode. I think I'll make it anyway, but it would be awesome to hear if you guys want to hear it too. But the moral of this whole point here is that learning to say no to things that aren't important to you automatically gives you more time to dedicate towards working to the things that matter most. Okay, number 6, network and social capital. I feel like being someone from quite a small city, as in like not London or New York or any of those, I feel like this one can be a little trickier. But obviously I'm still working on it and I still want to do my best in this regard. But the top 1% women understand that their network is their net worth. So they surround themselves with people who lift them up and push them to become better. Now, I don't know if this is an official term, but I heard a reel or a podcast or something the other day that was talking about this idea of expanders. I actually made a whole reel on this as well. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, this is my Instagram @byariaemily. I would love to see you on there. And if this podcast has changed your life in any way, shape or form, I would love if you could send me a DM and let me know, because that would just make me the happiest person ever. And that'd be awesome and I'll cheer you on. But anyways, these people called expanders, they are the people who challenge your existing beliefs and push you to think even further and push you to believe that even more than you think is possible is actually achievable. An example that I can think of this is when I was listening to a podcast, and I cannot remember the name of the host or the name of the guest or anything, but the host was interviewing this guest who said just so casually that they were making 50K a month. And I was like what? Like, I literally had to rewind it because I was like, there is no way. Like, I didn't even think that was possible. I'd only ever heard of people making like 10K a month. I was just in such disbelief. I was like, and she didn't even hesitate. She was just like, yeah, I make 50K a month. And I was like, what? And so I really felt that effect of just my mind, like my ceiling being lifted, because I realized that so much more is possible. It's like when people say like, it's always impossible until someone does it. And it's sort of like, it's always impossible in your mind until someone else does it. And then you realize, oh, it's actually not so impossible. I could probably do it too. And so what I realize now is that the more that I surround myself with people who are either at the level that I want to be or believe that that is possible, and even further, then the less that I actually question whether it's possible and literally just start working towards it like it is inevitable. The point of all of that is to say that you should surround yourself with people who push you to believe that you are so much more capable than you think you are. Surround yourself with people who think bigger than you and who make your crazy ambitious goals seem easy in comparison to theirs. It sort of reminds me of something that I think it was one of my karate teachers when I was younger told me, and he said to always fight against someone that is better than you. And I was like, oh, why? Like, I'm always going to lose. And he just like, yes, but that's going to push you to become better, because if you're not pushing yourself, how are you ever going to become better? And I think that's really applicable, because if you're always surrounding yourself with people who are better than you, then that just automatically subconsciously raises your ceiling and raises what you think is possible. And you will just notice that you're just going to start excelling more naturally, because it's natural in the space of those people that you're surrounding yourself with. So trust me, the more time that you spend with these kinds of people, the more natural it'll be for you to just excel. Number 7 is resilience and reframing failures. I actually wrote a whole LinkedIn newsletter on this the other day because, unlike most people believe, success isn't just a culmination of small successes, but rather success is basically on a mountain of failures. And you've probably heard a million times that it's not a failure, you just learn from your mistakes, and failure isn't a thing or whatever. But I want to dare to say that I want you to try to fail. What I mean by that is that I want you to try so many times, and I want you to shoot your shot so delusionally, outrageously far that it is like impossible for you not to fail. Because eventually when you make it your goal to fail, you aren't even afraid of failure. Because if I told you that you were just 100 failures away from all the success that you've ever wanted, how would you be acting? Because that's not just a hypothetical. Most people are just a handful of failures away from what they want. Perhaps you are just 10 cold emails away from a response, or 10 applications away from your dream job, or 10 posts away from going viral, or 10 emails away from converting your email list into buyers, or 10 runs away from breaking your personal best. You get the idea, I could go on. The point is, stop seeing failures as the end and something to be afraid of. Make it your goal to fail, because as soon as you do that, I promise you, you are going to go so much further, so much faster. And that is what all the top 1% women know. Now, number 8 is intentional grooming and presentation. I feel like this one can be a little bit controversial because everyone's like, don't worry about how you look, you are naturally beautiful, you don't need to worry about it, you're perfect just the way you are. And yes, this is 100% true. You are beautiful, you are an incredible human being, and you have no reason to ever doubt that. But we cannot ignore the fact that humans are visual creatures, and when we make an impression of someone, that first impression is almost always going to be visual. And I feel safe in saying that most of the time it does go past your natural appearance, your genetics, and everything like that. Because if you imagine the exact same woman, but one day she goes into a job interview and her hair is a mess, her outfit doesn't match, she hasn't done her skincare or her makeup, and she just looks really exhausted and disorganized, that gives off the vibe that she is disorganized and she doesn't take herself seriously and hence wouldn't take her work seriously, so she isn't very likely to get hired. Compared to if you imagine the same woman and she walks into that same job interview, but she has good posture, her hair is nicely slicked back, she has a nice matching outfit which is nice and ironed, and you can tell that she takes care of herself. That implies that she is organized, she is on top of things, and she actually cares about the quality of the work that she produces. Exact same person, just different ways that they present themselves. And so we really can't ignore that fact when it comes to actually how we present ourselves. Because if I was sitting here in this podcast and I was sitting in my bed and I had my pajamas on, it's going to give a very different vibe to me sitting on a chair. I've actually dressed up for this, I have done my hair. It gives a very different vibe. And this applies for both in public and in private. Because if you work from home and you just wear your pajamas every day because that's comfortable, which I don't blame you for, you might be comfortable, yes, but it signals to your brain that you're not taking today very seriously and it doesn't really matter if you get your work done or not. Compared to if you were to wake up a bit earlier, you were to have a nice shower, do your skincare, put your hair up nicely and put on a nice matching outfit, that signals to your brain that today is an important day, we're getting stuff done, we're gonna be productive and feel on top of things. So it's actually really important as well, how you perceive yourself is also a lot based on how you actually treat yourself and how you take care of your appearance. Because if you want to be a top 1% woman, then you need to show your brain that you're worth the effort of putting in that effort to take care of yourself and to care about how you look and how you present yourself, because this will mean that you are more likely to perform better. Okay, that is the end of today's episode and the end of the top 8 habits of the top 1% women. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could rate this podcast on Spotify. It literally takes 10 seconds, literally just go to the show main page and it says rate this show or something in the about section. It takes you 10 seconds. It would mean the world to me, and it helps Spotify realize that this is a good podcast and it will share it to even more people, and we can just help even more people to become their best selves without burning out. And obviously if you're on YouTube, then like and subscribe and all of those kinds of things. And also on Spotify, you can also follow a show so that you don't miss another episode and another chance to become your best self without burning out. And also one final thing, if this podcast has changed your life in any way, shape or form, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could leave a comment underneath and tell me how it's changed your life, or send me a DM on Instagram, and I would just love to hear the impact that it's having. So yeah, that is all for today's episode. I cannot wait to see you in next week's episode, but bye for now.